Hi YouTube, it's Beck here from Sewbecurated. I think I just knocked the camera and it probably did some bumping around. Sorry about that. I'm here to do a little bit of tutorial on how I hand quilt. There's lots of ways to hand quilt, like most things in quilting. You need to find the way that you enjoy doing it and the process that's good for you. And before I show you what I do, I'm going to show you the notions that I find really important when I'm hand quilting. So I am hand quilting this quilt here, my Betsy 9 patch, and I'm just doing a cross hatch on it. And so you can see it's both ways here and only one way here. So I'm just doing the other line of stitching. Because it's straight line quilting, and I do use friction, not friction. I use a Sewline water erasable pen when I need to, or alternatively a Clover white pen if it's on a really dark fabric when I need to see it. I prefer not to use either of those though. It's just another step of removing that or like kind of getting rid of it. But I like to use a Hera marker and a ruler. I've got a really cool groovy one that we had in the shop at one point. And they are by Whip Stitch. So look how cool that is. I'm all about the fun notions. And I'll show you how these work to mark up your quilting. You'll always see me probably hand quilting with a Pearl 8 thread. So the one I'm using at the moment is Ecru DMC. It's one of my go-to colors. I also use black by DMC, but I also use Wonderfil threads, and especially Sue Spargo's Wonderfil Pearl 8s. They're a really lovely thread. Wonderfil, I think, does really great colors. For some reason, I don't know what it is, I do prefer DMC for the Ecru and the black. Just to be different, I guess. So, and then I have a needle. So I've talked about these before, Bohin needles. Now, number 10, I think, or number 7. I'm not sure. You can check my shop. You don't buy them from my shop, but you can check my shop. I have 3 Bohin needles. I have a pack that's 3 to 9, and that's a good needle to pack to start out with if you just want to try out the needle and see if it might suit you. It's either a 10 or a 7 that I use. The other one is for applique or handwork. It is a straw milliner's needle. It's currently got a blue thread in it. I'll take that out because I'm not actually quilting in blue. This is quite a new needle. It hasn't got very much of a bend in it. I tend to put a bend in them because I'm putting a lot of force on them. I quite like that. If you don't like a bendy needle, don't know. I like the length because I load a few stitches onto my needle at one time. Now, these needles, they don't have a particularly, took the thread out, a particularly big eye. So there is a way, I'm going to show you how I thread the needle in 2 secs, that you can thread them easily. And it really involves just having a sharp snip and called scissor and using your teeth. Now, the other thing I tend to use when I am hand quilting, I'm going to call myself a lazy girl. I like to quilt in bed a lot or on the couch. So I use the back of my sandpaper board for all sorts of things. You could use whatever. It just needs to be a hard surface. And I have that under the quilt, and then I use my ruler and my Hera marker to mark up my quilting. But I'm just going to show you. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. It drives Lucy crazy when I put a needle in my mouth in the shop. Now I can't find the end of the pearl thread. What a great video this is. What is going on here? It's all knotted up somehow. Okay, I'm going to show you how I thread it with a blue thread. It might be better for the camera anyway. I just used a good snip. I love the Karen K Buckley's. Your notions do matter. So I've got a a sharp edge on that, or a blunt edge. Then I wet and I flatten between my teeth, and then I don't have problem getting it through. So I like to flatten, and I make sure it's a sharp snip on it. It really does matter, that sharpness. If you're having trouble threading your bohin needle with your pearl 8 thread, there are machines, like we've got little mechanical threaders, and they work mostly. I use one late at night if I'm really tired and my eyes aren't really great, but I mostly just do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to turn you around and show you how I hand quilt. So when I hand quilt, I just do a single knot at the end of my thread. I don't do a quilter's knot, and it's because I'm on the edge of my work here, but if I'm pulling it through, and I'll show you how to bury the thread, you want to be able to pull your needle through your work and bury it in your batting. So the way that the Hera marker and the ruler works is, so I've got a line of quilting here, and now I'm going to do a line of quilting here. And, you work in 1/4 of an inch here because that will be the binding of the quilt. I know probably most of this is self-explanatory, and you're like, what are you doing? So you get your Hera marker, you get this end here, it's curved, and you just go like this. It's not a pen, it just puts a crease line in your work, and you can see it quite well there. And then what I do, you can do it with a bigger ruler obviously, but as I just go along and I keep putting, oops, I just moved it at the end. And if you're having trouble seeing it, you can, I'm just going to do it just next to this line here so you can see. You can really kind of indent it, and it's just that goes away over time. So you can't mark up your whole quilt. I kind of do one line at a time, and this is quite a big quilt. I'm not sure how big it is. It's big. And I mark a whole line across the quilt, and then I do that whole line, then I mark the next one. So let's pretend at this point. So here's my line here that I'm coming in, and I want to, so if you're starting here, I would just come up and I bury my knot into my batting there, and I'm using a cotton batting. People often ask about that. I just used one from a shop called Spotlight in Australia. It is, I think, Joann's, like that kind of a shop in the US. I like 100% cotton batting. It's not super, I think it's a nice weight. It's good for hand quilting, I think. Anyway, so you just come up. Oh, now if I'm going to show you how to bury the thread, I'll have to show you in a sec. Maybe I'll show you at the end. So I work diagonally away from me, and I'm holding my quilt on the edge. Now at the moment, I can fit all the edge of my quilt into my hand, but sometimes when it's in the middle of the quilt, I have to hold from the back kind of because I can't fit all of my quilt into my hand. But at the moment I can, and I have, you can see, I've got like callus on my hand here. So it is kind of, that finger is dead. It's sometimes I break through that and it gets really sore. And then I will use a stick-on thimble or a clover leather thimble, but I much prefer to work without. I also sometimes get a little hole here from pushing, but for me, what helps me get a result that I'm happy with is being able to feel what I'm doing with my hands. So I load my stitches on. It's a rocking stitch, so I'm rocking my fabric on to my needle, and you can hear that prick at the back. That is actually the needle hitting my finger, and then I pull through. Now I've been doing this a long time and I can get a pretty even stitch. It is just practice. But I also think you need to give yourself grace that we are not machines. We are people making a handmade item. Every stitch contains love. I work with a long thread, which I know you're not meant to, but I prefer not to thread up all the time. And it is a little bit tricky at these points where there's more layers because you've got your seam allowance from your fabrics in these spots. So you've got a double layer of fabric. Now, the reason I do the rocking stitch, so you can see just there that I've done one square, is because on the back, and it's a little bit hard to see on this quilt because it's quite a busy back. This is the Betsy 9-patch quilt, and so I've put Betsy on the back of mine, but you can see the line of stitching, hopefully, here, you get a nice result back and front. If you stab from the front, so if you do a stitch like this, where you stab from the front, and this is what people do when they are using a hoop, and then come back up, you'll be able to get your stitches closer together, but you end up with not as nice a result on the back. So you can see right there that my stitch is quite big comparatively to these ones here that are coming through. And that's because it's a stab stitch. Now, I think probably you'd get good at that over time. I'm just pulling that stitch out, sorry, because I didn't like it. It's not the way I like to quilt. And I'm just going to show you how I bury a knot as well. So just one sec while I rethread my needle. So, show you a little bit more stitching and then I'll bury my thread. So I normally just am working on my lap. I'm working a little bit off my lap here because I'm doing it under, sorry, the camera. So I probably put like 4, maybe 5 stitches on my needle. It's why I like the straw milliner's needle. It's nice and long. It's nice and sharp. Bohins are really good needles. So definitely check those out if you haven't come across them. What have I done there? Somehow I had a knot in there. Okay, so let's just pretend at this point that, actually what we'll do, let's take our needle down, take off this thread. Coming up to the end of my thread, I need to bury my knot and start quilting again. So I just do a single loop knot, and then if you put your needle on your thread to where you want it to tie to, it will tie to that spot. You pull it down to that spot. So I've left about a stitch length out. And then again with my fingers on the back of the quilt so I can feel what's going on, I'm going to go through the batting, make sure I don't go through to the backing of my quilt. And then I do a big stitch at this point because there's that knot sitting on top and you have to just, now it doesn't want to go through, of course. Tug it through. So it went through. It's not through to the back of my work because I could feel where I was. You probably won't be able to see that because of the fabric that I'm using. That knot just got caught in my batting. So, and then just pull it a little bit tighter again, snip it off, and then it's done. And then you would just, again, pretending I'd rethread my needle. So I just come through from somewhere nearby on about the same angle, just up ahead. And we've got a knot here that needs to come in. Also just through my batting, not through my backing. Same thing, tug through, it's caught in the batting. And then we start stitching again. So they're my tips for straight line quilting. As I said, look, I have been doing this a while. I'll show you on this square here because it's such a pretty Betsy. I'm quite even. This is a ruler. So to there is 1 inch, and we've got like 4, sometimes 5 stitches. It's human stitching. So it doesn't have to be entirely perfect for me to think that looks really beautiful. If you are struggling with perfectionism, try and let it go. This is, I don't know, the process of hand quilting can be extremely meditative. It's got really cold in Newcastle over the last week, so it's really nice to do the stitching under your blanket. I just, enjoy the process. And then this is the result. It's well worth it if you've got the time. I just struggle with the time. I always love the effect of it though. And, you can use all sorts of colors. You'll see in some of my other work that I like to use black. Hold on. Sorry, I thought I'd turn you around given that I was just chatting away. I like to use black pearl 8 thread, or I use colors sometimes. And I'm about to, as soon as I finish this one, I'm going to start quilting my Gosling quilt, and I'm thinking of quilting it in green. We'll see how that goes. Sometimes I like to think about it for quite a while before I get going. Anyway, I hope this, oh no, I've got something else to show you. This is my quilt book. I'm just going to turn you back around. So this book was given to me by my dear friend Vicky, who was in one of my earlier videos. It's from Liberty of London, of course. Not of course, but I do love Liberty. And I decided all the way back when I was making my vintage geese quilt, which was kind of the first quilt that I designed that went quite well, in April 2020, that I would start recording the fabrics that I put into quilts. So as a scrappy quilter, I have lots and lots and lots of fabric in any quilt. And so my 4th quilt pattern was Scrambled Starshine. I wonder what I did in between. I'm not even sure. So this is COVID home shelter period. So it's like some bits and pieces of, my life at this stage. But I just use a glue stick, like a normal glue stick, onto the page. It does become really fat, as you can see. And this book is only really half full. I've still got lots to go. But so it's a record of the fabrics I have used in any quilt. Here's my It's a Lot quilt, which has been like a big seller for me. It's a Lot started 1st of January 2021, named because of the 2020 COVID period ongoing. So I think we weren't locked down in Newcastle in Australia at that point. Like we weren't, but the kids certainly weren't back to school normally, and it was quite a lot. And my eldest child was in year 11 at that point at school, second last year of school, and she found this period incredibly challenging because she was somebody that was focused very much on school, and then suddenly school was all over the shop. So these are all the fabrics that I was using. So, lots of Liberty, and that was a Japanese Liberty. That was one of the first fabrics I ever bought, and it was from Emma's first quilt, and she was maybe 3 when I made her first quilt for her, and she's my eldest. But little scraps make their way into the quilts. There's, some petite pan. I've always loved that for a long time. And, all the fabrics that I used in the quilt, I put little bits and pieces. That was one of Emma's tops. That was from Otto's bibs. When he was Bubba, I made him bibs. And I find this to be a beautiful record of the fabrics that I've used in the quilts. Oops, I missed a page. Heather Ross, always loved. Greens, always loved. And then on to the next one. So, you know, this is the Betsy, the one that you just saw me quilting. This is all the Betsy's, a little scrap of all the Betsy's. I mean, some of them are so similar, but different, that I have used in my Betsy 9 patch. Used this one twice. I'm not sure why. I was telling a friend about that the other day, and she's like, why did you choose to use one of them twice? And I said, I don't know. It's taken me so long to get it hand quilted that I can't remember what the process was. But I believe I chose it because, and I've forgotten to cut a piece of 4 Betsy colorways and I can't work out what they are. But, you know, I obviously chose to use it because I've got 2 9 patches left that I've just tucked in here. Anyway, I thought you might like to see that. So happy stitching, everybody. I hope the tute was of use to you.